Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Welcome to a Smart Silver Stacker live stream. Gonna wait just a couple of moments here to allow some people to join before we really get into things. And if you are joining, please give me a shout out there in the chat. Say hello. Let me know some people are watching so we can really get into some of the news of the day. Here, I'll start us off. Big hello to everybody out there. I think I'm seeing the chat. Okay. Yeah, I'm not a super experienced live streamer, so you'll have to bear with me in case I have any technical issues or anything like that. And if you can hear me and everything is working out here, please do give me a thumbs up or a shout out there in the chat. Let me know that someone's watching before we really get into the news of the day. Okay, there we go. Pastor Mo. Hey, Pastor. Because we got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Glad to have some people joining us in the chat there. Hey, just stumbled in here. Well, welcome, Cultural Antidote. Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started then. We've got some people watching. Hey, all right, plenty of people. I love guns and I love silver. Guns and silver. Well, that's a great name there. Yeah, me too. Okay, let's go ahead and get things started here today. So, plenty in the news, plenty in the world right now. We've got this ongoing debt crisis. We've got this lack of liquidity in the treasuries market. And Janet Yellen has expressed some concerns for the breakdown in the U.S. Treasuries market. And really, this is a global debt problem. We've already seen things break down in the UK. We've seen a spiking in the British gilts, and the Bank of England has had to go in there and intervene with emergency bond buying first. I'm sorry, I started reading some of the chat there. An emergency bond buying program. And that is likely to spread here to the U.S. Now, Janet Yellen doesn't seem too concerned. She says that the Fed has their repurchase facility and that can provide a liquidity backstop for the treasuries market. And they're probably going to have to use some tools to keep U.S. Treasury yields from climbing too much. And, there's been a lot of speculation that we may have already seen some kind of a stealth pivot. Is this the first live stream you've done? Someone asks me. No, I've done a few in the past, but it's been a while. So if you're joining me here, this is the first Smart Silver Stacker live stream in some time. Oh, Emmett D is in the chat. I always like your comments, Emmett. I appreciate you watching so many of the videos. Oh, we already got some questions coming in. And if you have some questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will do my best to get to those. Let's see, right now, how do you think low fixed mortgages will play out if inflation skyrockets? Yeah, if you have a low fixed rate mortgage and inflation does skyrocket, which I suspect, that is the road we are headed down, you will benefit from that. Anybody with debt at a fixed interest rate is going to benefit because you're going to be able to pay those off with devalued currency. And so, if you're holding some metals, for example, you will be able to sell those for a higher price because the currency is devalued and you'll be able to pay off your debt. And debtors tend to benefit from raging inflation. And, one of the biggest debtors of all, of course, is the U.S. federal government. They've got $31 trillion now in debt. And they also have, hundreds of trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities. And so the only way those are going to get paid is if the currency is inflated away. Of course, the other option is a default and, the consequent economic catastrophe. So, they're going to have to pick one. And I suspect that the choice they will make is hyperinflating the currency. Now, this is another story I wanted to get into today. This is Russia's Putin hails ties as he meets UAE president. So Putin is meeting with the president of the United Arab Emirates, and he's praising the cooperation of OPEC in their production cuts, how they are stabilizing world energy markets. Those are his words, not mine. And the fact that, the UAE and Putin are cozying up to one another, this is just a further example of the division between East and West that we are seeing in the world. And I think that in this article we had some charts, of OPEC oil production by country. So the UAE coming in number 3. So certainly they're a major player. Of course, Saudi Arabia, the biggest one of all. And so they're really in the driver's seat when it comes to OPEC. And that's pretty important because, we were pleading with MBS over there. He was meeting with Biden and getting a fist bump and all that stuff. And the U.S. was putting some pressure and really asking very strongly for Saudi Arabia not to proceed with these OPEC production cuts. But they went ahead and did it anyway. So it's a bit of a slap in the face of the Biden administration and the U.S. in general. And now we are seeing these other leaders of OPEC nations like the United Arab Emirates cozying up with Vladimir Putin. And I think that's a sign of things to come. Let's see. Let's take a look here at the chat if there's anything coming through there. You're welcome, JJ Watt. No problem. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody would like to put in the chat here. So, Alan P. says, USA is talking about stopping Russian aluminum imports. Sounds bad. Yeah, I heard about that. I heard about the LBMA, I think, is talking about not just banning Russian gold and silver, but they're also talking about now banning base metals. And, if we stop importing base materials from these countries, it just means that inflation is going to get worse. We're going to have to pay more for them because the supply is going to be diminished. So I don't think it's a wise idea to stop the imports of any of these essential commodities when we're dealing with this inflation problem. The Fed seems to think that they can accomplish the war against inflation just by, raising interest rates. But if there's a fundamental supply problem, it's going to be hard to fix that unless you really, really crank up the rates and you put incredible pressure on the economy and you go for the demand destruction route. But demand destruction isn't that fun to live through, as folks over in Europe are beginning to learn right now. So anyway, back to this energy story. Saudi Arabia, the number one producer in OPEC here, and they did proceed with the production cuts despite U.S. pressure. And now we've got President Biden. This is a article that just came out yesterday from NPR. Biden rethinking the U.S. relationship with Saudi Arabia after OPEC cuts. And we can see the quote here from Biden. He says, I am in the process. When the House and the Senate comes back, there's going to be some consequences for what they've done with Russia. Now, I don't know what exactly he's referring to. He was vague here with this statement, obviously. He declined to elaborate on what the consequences would be. But it's hard to imagine what the U.S. could do to punish Saudi Arabia for this OPEC production cut. Because really, Saudi Arabia is holding all the cards here, folks. They've got the oil, they've got the real stuff. And if we wanted to sanction them, that would obviously be shooting ourselves in the foot. If you want OPEC to not cut production, and then they cut production, and then you sanction them so you get even less oil? It doesn't make any sense. And there's very few options for the U.S. to punish Saudi Arabia for these production cuts. And ultimately, Saudi Arabia, they do hold the trump cards here because they are the linchpin in the petrodollar system. They are the ones who we rely on for this fundamental underpinning of the dollar as the world reserve currency. The petrodollar system, that's been in place since the 1970s. When Richard Nixon took the dollar off of the gold standard, he ended convertibility of the dollar into gold in 1971, the value of the dollar started to plunge. And so they came up with this alternative option where they went to Saudi Arabia and they said, hey, we'll give you weapons and we'll give you military support. In exchange, you've got to sell your oil for dollars. You need to price it in dollars. And the Saudis got on board for this, and that has created a tremendous demand for dollars around the world, because all of these other OPEC nations and oil-producing nations followed suit with Saudi Arabia. And so if you want to sell oil or you want to buy oil, you're going to need dollars. And because all of the people selling it, all of the nations and the producers who are selling it, they're pricing it in dollars. And that lends a tremendous amount of strength to the dollar as the world reserve currency because there's this insatiable demand for it. And that's really the whole reason that we've been able to accumulate this massive level of national debt that we have, because these countries, what they do is they sell the oil for dollars and then they get those dollars and they recycle them into U.S. treasuries. They buy U.S. treasuries with them, and that keeps the yields on treasuries low, and it allows the U.S. federal government to run these tremendous deficits, and it allows us to live well beyond our means. And we've been doing that for decades now, But that system is becoming very fragile. And this OPEC production cut, this slap in the face to the Biden administration from the Saudis, that shows us that the petrodollar system may not have much longer to exist. And that means a huge threat to the dollar status as the world reserve currency. Now, of course, we're not going to go quietly. Ultimately, the thing that really backs up the petrodollar system is the U.S. military, which is still the biggest in the world. So, we are certainly living in interesting times, and I don't know exactly how all of this is going to play out, but I suspect that the outcome at the very end, once we move on to whatever the next system is going to be a greatly devalued dollar. Let me go back to the comments here. I think I saw some questions there. Emmett D said Russians easily can respond by limiting palladium exports, which will hurt auto industry globally. Yeah, you're right. And we're going to talk a little bit more about platinum and palladium and all the platinum group metals here on this live stream in just a few minutes. We're going to get to that. But you are correct. They do control the palladium supply. And, the countries that control the platinum supply, that's South Africa. But I said we're going to get into that. So just, stay tuned because we're going to be talking about platinum group metals here in just a moment. Let's see. Cultural Antidote says, SSS, if you were to guess a date when the U.S. dollar could lose its reserve currency status, when would that be? Well, that's a hard thing to time. Market timing is not really my forte, and it's a very difficult thing to do. But if I had to place a date on it, just for speculation, I would go ahead and say 2026. And the reason I say that is if you've read anything about the generational theory of Strauss and Howe, if you've read The Fourth Turning, their book, that is the date that they mark as the end of this current fourth turning. So they think that, whatever conflict that we are currently experiencing will be resolved by that time. And interestingly enough, that book was written some time ago. I think it was written in the 90s. And they nailed 2020 as the year that would kick off this fourth turning. So that was a pretty accurate forecast. So 2026 seems like as good a year as any to say when the dollar may lose its reserve currency status. Now, of course, give or take, because that may not be the final resolution of this crisis that we're moving through, this time of great change, this fourth turning. But, if you had to pin me down and say a date, I would say that's a pretty good one. Let's see, what else do we got here? Did you see that petition to bring back the gold standard? Yeah, I did a video on it yesterday. There's a law before Congress. I think the congressman's name is Alex Haley, if I recall correctly. And I had said something in that video about him being from Florida, but he's actually from West Virginia. And he's put a law before Congress. It's called the Gold Standard Restoration Act. And, I don't think that has much of a chance of passing. But it is interesting because it shows that, an awareness of the need for sound money is sort of entering the zeitgeist. So, there is talk of bringing back the gold standard. Again, not going to happen, but, if it did, that certainly would be an interesting thing. Let's see what else we got here. It's all about the oil. Yep, sure is. The oil is what runs the world. Do you feel that a series of major events could unfold all at the same time to put the West in a position where we can't respond? China moves on Taiwan, Russia uses a nuke, North Korea invades South Korea. Well, yeah, it's always fun to do some doom and gloom speculation, and all of those are realistic threats that we're facing at the moment. So, yeah, I suppose that a series of events like that could kick off, and that might be how things play out. Once any one of those events unfolds, it may be a trigger for the rest of them to sort of cascade. Like if we see NATO troops, say, get deployed in Eastern Europe, or a tactical nuclear weapon goes off there and we have some kind of massive, overwhelming conventional response against Russian forces, China might see that as an opportunity to make their move on Taiwan, thinking that, it would be a chance for them to get the U.S. to be forced to deal with two theaters of conflict at a time. Now, we do have a lot of military forces in the Pacific too, but that's kind of going down another rabbit hole. And yeah, I think that you are onto something there, that we might see a chain reaction and a series of events could unfold all at one time. Smash that like button. Thanks, Broke Stacker. Shout out to Broke Stacker out there. Smash that like button, everybody. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, if you're enjoying this live stream, please do that. Please give it a big thumbs up. It helps spread this information. And I love that the channel has gotten to the point now where I can do one of these live streams and we get like a good conversation going on in the chat. That's a lot of fun for me, and I hope for all of you too. And I just want to say a huge thank you to any of you who are subscribed to the channel. We just hit 30,000 subscribers, so that is a huge milestone. And you know, when I started this channel years ago, I never really had an idea that I would ever have that many subscribers. So just again, a huge thank you. I really appreciate it. And Benny says, keep the great content coming. I will do my best, sir. And it's all for you guys. I really appreciate all of you watching. So what else do we got here aside from that story? This is one from, I think this originally appeared on Market Watch, but I found it here on Head Topics because there's a paywall on Market Watch. So, you know, you got to deal with this kind of weird repost here. But title is, Why Questions Are Swirling About Who Will Buy More Than $31 Trillion of U.S. Debt and at What Price? And you know, we're going to get into this article. There's some interesting comments from an analyst from Morgan Stanley in here, but I think a pretty good answer to that question is that why would anybody want to buy a U.S. Treasury that's yielding 4% when inflation is above 8%? You know, who wants to put money up for 10 years for a guaranteed loss of 4% annually? It doesn't make any sense. And we're going to get the CPI numbers for September tomorrow, so that'll be interesting as well. Oh, we got a super chat here, so I guess I should go over there and take that. What is your favorite movie about gold and silver? That's a good question. A movie about gold and silver. You know what's an interesting movie about gold and silver? This isn't my favorite, I guess, but an interesting one is, have you ever seen that movie Loopers? Where it's like a time travel movie with Bruce Willis, and these guys are like assassins. They wait by a time portal, and some guy comes through, and they have to shoot him. And then, you know, it ends up being themselves at some point. They get some big payoff. But anyway, it's a good movie if you want to check it out. I don't think I gave you any spoilers there. But one of the interesting things is, because it's people from the future, it's like 100 years in the future that are sending people through these portals. And the way they pay their hitmen is in gold and silver. Because obviously, you know, if you were to pay somebody, let's say from the 19th century, sending them back fiat currency wouldn't make any sense. But if you send them back gold and silver, hey, it's always money, right? And there's a scene in that movie where this guy's stacking up these like 1 kilo silver bars in this hidden safe he has in his floor. And I always liked that scene. I always thought that that was a really interesting aspect of that movie. And it's a good movie in its own right, aside from the whole gold and silver thing. I mean, that's really just sort of a very minor subplot. But that's a fascinating one. And hey, if you have a favorite movie about gold and silver, put that in the chat so we can all see, because, you know, that kind of stumped me for a moment. I'm sure there's other good movies about gold and silver. Oh, someone put Die Hard 3. Yeah, that's right. They're trying to cut through the wall to steal the Fed's gold reserves. Now, wouldn't it be a funny twist if in Die Hard 3 they had cut through the wall into the New York Fed's vaults, but there was nothing there? Oops, turns out the Fed already sold that gold years ago. I'm just kind of kidding with that, you know, but hey, who knows? I mean, that could be the case. I know there's a lot of speculation about that, but that would be a funny twist. Emmett D, you were doing a great job, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. I mean, I always like when you guys comment on the videos too. You know, there's like a core group of you that go ahead and comment on all these videos, and I always enjoy interacting with you. The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, The Wizard of Oz, I think, actually is about gold and silver, and it's about like there's some subplot there. I don't know too much about it. I've seen the movie, of course, but I think it's about William Jennings Bryan and like the bimetallic silver standard. So that's something to read about. Maybe I can do some more content on that, but that's an interesting point. But let's take a look at this article here and see what this guy from Morgan Stanley had to say, because there's an analyst from Morgan Stanley who had some interesting quotes here. If I can find that. Sorry, not trying to give you dead space here on there. I'm just looking through all this text. Oh yeah, here we go. So this guy, Hornbach, he's an analyst at Morgan Stanley, and he said that someone is going to purchase these treasuries that are being issued by the U.S. government. But the real relevant question here is not who will buy the securities, but at what price, right? Because, again, who wants to buy government treasuries for a guaranteed loss of 4% annually? I mean, until government treasuries, U.S. government treasuries, get up to having real rates, which at this point, according to the CPI, would be 8.3%, why would anybody buy them? I mean, there's so many other assets there you could go into. And, it's true, so far this year, cash has been one of the best performing assets. So I guess that, even if the dollar is losing its purchasing power in absolute terms, maybe treasuries, the fact that they give you some yield and now a higher yield than before, so, they're relatively more attractive. There is still some argument to be made there, but there are growing expectations, this article mentions, for a 5% Fed's fund rate. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing these rates continue to creep up, and the Fed, there were some notes that came out from the FOMC meeting today, not the FOMC meeting, but the notes came out today, where the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee at the Federal Reserve, was saying that, they're willing to be committed to this tighter policy and that the risks of tightening or the risks of inflation outweigh the risks of tightening, basically. So, read that as they are willing to tank the economy to fight inflation. But, this is just what the Fed says. And what the Fed says is a lot different than what the Fed does. Of course, we know that the Fed says a lot of crazy stuff. We had Ben Bernanke, who, by the way, I think he just won a Nobel Prize, right? So that's pretty wild. Smash the like button if you think it's ridiculous that Ben Bernanke gets a Nobel Prize, because he's pretty much the reason that we're in this pickle that we're in right now, and why rates were kept so low for so long, and why we accumulated this massive level of debt. But speaking of the federal funds rate, now this is the chart from the St. Louis Fed, and now the latest number here, 2.56. We're up around 3% actually in the federal funds rate right now. And if you want to go back to a time when that was the case, you got to go all the way back to 2008. And they're talking about a 5% federal funds rate in that article we just took a look at. And you got to go back to 2007 to find a time when the federal funds rate was that high. So that's a long time ago now. And, big difference between now and 2007 is that the federal national debt was, I think, something like $9 trillion back then, and we just hit $31 trillion. So the higher rates go, rather, the higher the debt is when these rates are going up, the more debt service there's going to be. So, that is going to be a real problem. And if you zoom out to the longer term version of this chart, you can see that, the yield, the federal funds rate has been declining steadily since 1980 or so, when Paul Volcker cranked it way up to get inflation under control. And every time since then that the Fed has tried to raise rates, something in the market has broken and they've been forced to slash rates again. And you can see this is a very predictable cycle. If you put a line on the chart, I can't do it right now because I don't have a charting tool set up, but if you put a downward sloping line from all these federal funds rate peaks, you can see that we've already broken through that line, and it's very likely that something is going to break in the markets, in the debt market, very soon. Let me read some of the questions here. Cash is not trash. Yeah, well, not for now. Following the yellow brick road, you got it at SSS. Yeah, that, I suppose, was the allegory there in the in the movie there. Can you bring up the paper to silver ratio? Yeah, I can pull up the U.S. debt clock here. I think they have that. Tom Elliott says, are you investing in any silver miners? If so, do you think the upside potentially is greater than stacking itself? Alternatively, I view stacking as a guaranteed investment. Your view? Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Tom. I do have shares in miners. I'm not going to mention any specific companies. I mean, they're mostly like large cap companies. Some of the bigger miners of gold and silver. I do own a few juniors as well, but those are highly speculative. And I view the miners as being potentially a tremendous payoff because, when you buy the miners, basically what you're buying is gold and silver in the ground at a huge discount. And when the price of gold and silver moves higher, their profits are going to be through the roof. So, if you're looking for like a 10x return, I think the miners are probably where that's going to be. And of course, they're more risky as well because you're investing in a company, in a business. And so there's all these other factors there. It's not just the price of gold and silver. You've got management teams, you've got laws in their local governments where these mines operate. They can have regulations. Mines can get nationalized. All sorts of things can happen. All sorts of things can go wrong with miners. But some of the larger ones that pay a nice dividend, I do think that those are a really, really good buy right now. It is different than stacking itself. Stacking is like a savings account. I mean, gold and silver are money. They're not really an investment, if you ask me. That's my view on it. Gold and silver are just money. And when you stack them, it's no different than saving dollars, for example. It's just that, dollars are worthless fiat currency that devalue constantly, and gold and silver are money that's been around for thousands of years. So that's the big difference. So yeah, I do view miners as a potential huge opportunity here. The GDX, the GDXJ, they're both very cheap right now, especially when you look at what's going on in the world. But gold and silver are more like the sure thing, more like cash, basically. I mean, they're just cash in a different form. They're money, if you ask me. Okay. Silver Dog says, is Bitcoin a buy or stay away? I have some Bitcoin. It's sitting in a wallet somewhere. I mean, I'm not buying any more myself at the moment. It is cheap, but there's, to say Bitcoin's cheap is kind of a hard thing to do because it's like relative to what? I mean, it's only been around for a little over a decade. And yeah, it's cheaper than the huge peak that we saw in November. But I mean, I think that was obviously a giant bubble. And will we get another crypto bubble reinflated? Possibly. I mean, if you feel like just gambling, I guess if you don't want to go to Vegas, you could buy some Bitcoin. But I don't view it as like an equivalent to gold or silver in any way at all. And I know people were touting it as digital gold and all this stuff, but I don't know. Bitcoin is fine. I think there is a use case for the blockchain. And eventually, we're going to see it being adopted more widely. I don't know what form that's going to be, and I'm not an expert on that by any means. There are some other cryptos out there that I think are kind of cool too, like Stellar Lumen is an example. Don't go out and buy Stellar Lumen because I'm talking about it. I don't even know what the price is right now, but that's one that has kind of an interesting ecosystem. But there's like thousands of cryptos out there, so I don't think that that's really a sure thing in any way, shape, or form. It's a tremendously risky asset to be getting into. I won't say much more on it, but no, I'm not buying Bitcoin. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Now, silver and gold, they've given up some of their gains that they had recently. We can take a look here at this 1 month chart of silver. Now, last Monday, we had that huge spike up, almost 10% in the price of silver. But now we have given up just about all of those gains. But a very interesting thing here is that, that huge spike up, and that was really on almost no news. That was just a sign of how coiled a spring the price of silver is. How much potential there is for these explosive moves higher in silver. And I think that 10% move that we saw in silver last week is going to be, it's going to be dwarfed by what's coming here in the future. Let's see. Tom says, I've never heard you talk on home safes. What safe have you got to keep your silver? I've never even said that I keep my silver in a safe, as far as storage of your silver, I'll just say this, don't keep it all in one place, keep it secure, keep it hidden. Sometimes the best place to hide things is in plain sight, or maybe store it outside of your house. I know people talk about safe deposit boxes a lot, and they say, oh, don't do that because, when you go to take your metal out of it, IRS agent's going to be in there. And yeah, that's a real threat too, but, there's something to be said for safe deposit boxes. I've used them in the past as well, and it just depends on your individual situation, where you keep your gold or silver. There's different solutions for everybody. Keep that private. Mike Keel says, yeah, exactly. I mean, that would be my suggestion as well. Like whatever kind of safe you get, don't advertise it. So if you got any other questions, please post them in the chat and I will get to them as quickly as I can. So the price of silver down back to about 19 bucks. Now premiums, of course, are still way up on silver bullion products. But I do think that now that we're seeing this pullback, it is kind of getting back to the time when it's a good time to be accumulating. If you were watching any of the videos I put out during that spike, I did say I wasn't buying. I still haven't really pulled the trigger on any purchases, but we're going to be getting into what I think are some good deals at the moment. We'll be getting into those in just a moment. Neophyte Stacker says, does the community accept that silver moves in the same direction as the stock market already? Um, I mean, silver is somewhat correlated to other assets, but on that day when silver spiked up by 10%, stocks weren't spiking up 10% either. They did have some gains, but I think that we're going to see any correlation between gold and silver and the stock market disappear here at some point, like when the Fed pivots or when the debt market breaks. We're going to see, but I don't think they're going to remain correlated to other risk assets for the foreseeable future. I think that will change. Hyper Goat says that my safe is 1 meter of dirt in the backyard. Okay, yeah, you buried some stuff. Yep. Well, there's one approach. You can be like the mole men, burying your metal out there. But again, if burying your silver in your backyard is what you want to do, then hey, whatever. I think people have this implicit bias that having physical precious metals is somehow dangerous and risky, but like keeping your money in a bank or a brokerage account is safe. That's a normalcy bias thing. I guess in any of our lifetimes that has been the case, right? U.S. banks have been pretty stable. There haven't been any run on the banks in a long time, and brokerages have remained safe, and bank accounts are insured by the FDIC. But an important thing here to remember is like the FDIC doesn't have any money. So if the FDIC has to start bailing out bank accounts, they're going to get the money from the printing press. So the money you get probably isn't going to be worth much. So, I don't think that banks and brokerage accounts are as safe as people think. And another thing, that we got to be worried about right now with everything that's going on in Ukraine and this escalation between Russia and Ukraine and NATO and Russia is we got those cyber attacks a couple days ago on U.S. airports, and those were just denial of service attacks. It wasn't anything too nasty, but the group that did that, I think they were called KillNet or something along those lines, they threatened to target U.S. brokerage accounts and online financial system stuff. So, among other things, they also threatened to target healthcare systems and all these different systems that we have that are hooked up to the grid. But I mean, there could very well be a cyber attack that takes out the U.S. banking sector, or, if it happens during, say, a giant plunge in the markets. Imagine a day when you go to log into your Robinhood account or whatever brokerage you use, and you can't log in because it's being, DDoSed. But you want to get in because markets are tanking, and oops, you can't make a sell order. So, things that are within the electronic digital financial system are not necessarily secure either. So that's why it's important to have a diverse portfolio of assets. Don't keep all your metals in one place either. Spread them around and, do what you can to make yourself less fragile to, catastrophic risk. Now, I've got this open twice. Let's see. Okay, now on to some physical metal. SDBullion.com's got these 1 ounce platinum bars on sale right now, and I'm kind of thinking about picking one of these up. I don't know. I feel like there is still the possibility of a big sell-off across assets, including precious metals, and there might be, some better opportunities in the near future, but I don't know about that either, because, if we do see a big sell-off in the paper price, it might just be the premium skyrocket. So, the price of physical, it's not the same thing as these paper assets. That's why I'm thinking about getting one of these. Now, I know it's not silver, it's platinum, but one of the reasons is that in silver, the premiums, and even in gold, the premiums remain very, very high. But these generic platinum bars, $59.99 over spot, not too bad, right? $954 for an ounce of platinum. I think that's a pretty good deal. And I want to talk a little bit more about platinum in this video. I mentioned that earlier, if you've been watching, that I was going to get a little bit more into that. And one of the reasons is because if you look at this platinum to silver ratio chart, this is from bullionbuypost.com. Silverdog says, I never bought platinum. Yeah, platinum is one of those things that wasn't really on my radar until fairly recently either. I actually saw a video by Sean Fu. He did a video on platinum, and that got me really kind of interested in it, and I bought a platinum eagle. I have 1 ounce of platinum, so, a very small part of my stack. But I am thinking of adding to that because just look at this ratio chart. This is the platinum to silver ratio chart, goes back to about 1991, and the higher this chart is, the higher the number on this chart goes, the more expensive platinum is relative to silver, and the lower it goes, the cheaper it is. And as you can see, we are very close to the lows for this 25-year time period. The all-time low on this chart is 33.31, and right now we're at 46.58. So platinum is still really, really cheap relative to silver. And, I look a lot at the gold to silver ratio chart, and we know that silver is very undervalued relative to gold. And so if platinum is undervalued relative to silver, well, it's very cheap, right? And I think that, if we take a look at this chart, the same thing is reflected. This is the platinum to gold ratio chart. And back in 2008, at kind of the peak of this chart, platinum was trading for 2.3 times the price of gold. Back then gold was something like $800, I think, in 2008, and platinum was like well over $1,600. And now the shoes have switched. I don't know that turn of phrase. I just butchered that. But anyway, the situation has changed now. The price of platinum now is about half of the price of gold. And so, platinum, very cheap right now. And it is an important industrial metal. It's used in catalytic converters. It's also a very important element for catalyst chemistry. So it's not just in cars and stuff. They use this in like the chemical industry to catalyze chemical reactions. And the real thing about platinum is there's just not very much of it. Now, I'll talk about that here in just a moment. I want to go back to the chat. Let's see. Anything here? Any questions? Dynamo says, been buying sterling from my local coin shop for no premiums. A great way to stack. Oh, yeah, if you can get sterling at no premium, anytime you can get silver for no premium in today's market, that is a good thing. Okay, sorry if I missed anything. There's kind of a lot of chats here I'm scrolling through in the interest of, not being silent on the channel. I love platinum. Just grabbed 3 ounces from my local coin shop. My name is nobody. Oh, we got a super chat here. Let's see. First, Alan P says, can you sell platinum at a coin shop? Yes, absolutely. There is a market for platinum coins and bars just like for gold and silver. I don't think you'll have a hard time selling your platinum when the time comes. Backyard Bear says, I love platinum as a potential big mover. Yeah, that's the thing about platinum is there is a potential big move. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment because platinum, there's a potential for a massive movement in that. Let's see. Cockpill says, I don't go hard on platinum, but I think it needs sprinkled in a person's stack. Well, thank you very much for that super chat there. And yeah, I kind of am of the same mind. I mean, my stack is very heavy on silver. I don't think that's any surprise to you. I have a kind of a heavy sprinkling of gold and then a very light sprinkling of platinum. I do not own any palladium. I will say that. But okay, so here's the thing about platinum. These are the major producers of platinum. This is from Statista in 2021. And you can see that South Africa makes the vast majority of the platinum in the world. And then Russia in the number 2 spot and Zimbabwe in the number 3 spot. And then Canada, the US, and other countries make up this like tiny fraction of world platinum production. So what does this tell us? Well, first of all, it's important to note that the supply of platinum in the world is very limited. There's not that much of it. I think the numbers are something like if you take an Olympic-sized swimming pool and then you take all the gold that's ever been mined in history, it'll actually fill up 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So, a lot of gold. That's a lot of gold. An Olympic-sized swimming pool by volume is a huge space. But platinum, if you try to fill up the same Olympic-sized swimming pool with platinum, it's only going to come up to about your ankles. There's very little of it out there in the world. Hey, Eli says, evening. What's up, Eli? You've been watching this channel for a long time, man. I always appreciate all of those comments that you leave. So, platinum, the supply of it is very small, and that means that any uptick in demand can create a huge price movement, and also that any interruption of the production, there's not a lot of existing supply to go around. So it's a very tight supply, and it's not used as much as silver in industry. It's not consumed at the same level, but it's still used a lot in catalytic converters and also by the chemical industry. So there is a constant demand for this stuff. And think about the producers here, South Africa, Russia, and Zimbabwe. Well, 2 of them are members of the BRICS nations. And then the third one, Zimbabwe, they've been cozying up with China recently. This is an article from July about the Zimbabwe president meeting with the Chinese diplomat to discuss bilateral cooperation. And China, they have this huge footprint in Africa. I mean, they're really investing with their Belt and Road project in Africa for the long game. They have a tremendous presence there. They have like these whole cities that they've built all over Africa to try to control the resources of that continent. And honestly, I mean, they're doing a pretty good job of it so far. So this is a real problem if the BRICS nations and the West continue to split, because you can see they control a tremendous portion of the world's platinum production. And there is really the possibility of a huge move up in this metal. One thing that we saw in palladium, which is also a platinum group metal, was that we saw the price of that absolutely skyrocket following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that's because Russia makes a big portion of the world's palladium. Well, if we see, like I said, if we see the continued division between BRICS and the West, just keep in mind they've got all the platinum, so it might not be a bad thing to have in your stack. And another platinum group metal that's really interesting, this is the chart for rhodium. So now rhodium is a platinum group metal. It kind of has similar applications as a catalyst and in catalytic converters. There's a lot less of it even than platinum. I mean, a tiny amount of rhodium. It's very rare. It's hard to process. There's not much of it out there. I think most of it gets produced as a byproduct of other metal production. But this price, was down around, $400 in 2016? $675, sorry. And 2017, it was at $900, so around where platinum is today. And then we just saw this absolute huge spike up in 2021. The price hit like $30,000 at its highest. I mean, an incredible squeeze in rhodium. And there was, an increase in demand for catalytic converters. And again, it's just a very tiny supply. So when demand ticks up or there's any interruptions to production, you can see this massive move up. And I'm not saying that platinum is going to hit $30,000 an ounce, but the possibility for a squeeze is there. That's my point. And so, it's a good thing to have. And another thing I will say that is a takeaway from this chart is that if you do have some platinum and you see the price spike up to, 30x the price or something like that, go ahead and sell it. Don't get greedy. Go ahead and sell it, because it's probably not going to stay up there for that long. If you did hold on to your platinum, if you've been holding it all along, I mean, you're still doing okay for yourself. It's still around $14,000 right now. So that's pretty good if you were buying it at $600 an ounce. But when you see that parabolic move up, and I mean, this is kind of in any asset, but especially in something like platinum, you probably want to sell when you see that parabolic move up. That's all. And that's a lesson we can learn there. That's pretty much all I really had to go on for this live stream. I guess I can pull up the US debt clock and we can just marvel at that for a minute. Yeah, so $31 trillion now, folks. That's a pretty big milestone there. Let me take a look here at the chat, see if there's any other questions. Liquid Electrum says, do you have any collectible coins? I have a soft spot for expensive Morgans, good or bad investment. Yeah, I do have some collectible coins. I've never really purchased any. I have a few that I came into from, relatives who passed away or something. They had like a couple of coins. Like I have a Carson City Morgan dollar from a deceased relative. I have no plans on selling that, obviously. It's kind of like an heirloom thing. But yeah, I do have a few. I don't really go too much for the collectible stuff. I do have some like semi-numismatic coins, I guess you might say. Like the Canadian, Royal Canadian Mint Kraken. I have a couple of those and some other things along those lines. And, I am generally a stacker. I'm mostly just interested in getting the most weight for for my dollar, most weight in metal. But every now and then you see a deal out there, you just see a coin or something, you want to indulge yourself and get something that's really cool. And that's kind of what I did with the Kraken. And, I have an excuse, I guess. I use them in videos sometimes. So, that's what I tell myself when I want to buy something that has a slightly higher premium on it, but it looks cool. I say, hey, I can always show that in a video. So I've got my little out there. But now, as a general rule, I'm not really too into collectible stuff. I've got a lot of junk silver, which is sort of turning into a collectible. So, I do like junk silver, and the premiums on that stuff has gone up quite a bit. It's like 30% higher than spot right now. I am still, I haven't bought any junk silver in a while, but it's still on my list of stuff I would like to be stacking, because I do think there's a huge potential for appreciation in junk silver specifically, because they're not making it anymore. And so the supply is never going to get any bigger. It's probably going to shrink because, if we see the price of silver move up, people will go sell them to the refiner or whatever. We've already seen that happen a couple of times. And I suspect that there's less junk silver out there than people really believe. I think that there's probably not that much of it left. And, whenever you see these big fluctuations in the price of silver and people go out and start buying up all the physical, one of the first things that you see disappear is junk silver. And I wouldn't call them collectible because they're really just kind of a bullion investment. I mean, most of my junk silver I bought at spot, years ago. When I first started stacking, I didn't have much money. I mean, it would be like, every couple weeks I could manage to save, $50 or something like that to go buy some coins. But junk silver was really nice for that because you buy small quantities of it. You go buy a couple dimes. Even if you only have a few dollars, you go buy a couple dimes at the coin shop. And back then I actually had a local coin shop near me that I would go to. And I remember a conversation I had with the owner. He was this old guy who'd been running the shop for like 50 years. He'd been stacking forever. He's seen it all. And he told me back then, he said, there's going to come a day when these coins are going to have their own numismatic premium on each one of them. And gosh, that guy was right. At the time I thought, okay, cool, give me another bag of dimes. I like junk silver. It's awesome. So let me stack it up. And back then, like I said, I was paying like spot. I mean, if you've been stacking for a decade, you remember that. You remember when you could get junk silver real cheap. But Stray Kitten says the time has passed for calling it junk. Yeah, you can call it constitutional silver. Junk is one syllable, which I find rolls off the tongue a little bit easier than constitutional. But yeah, 90% silver, whatever you want to call it, it's not junk, certainly. I just am in the habit of calling it that because that is just, the name that it goes by. Let's see, there was a super chat here for another one. Fractional Platinum Eagles have an insane premium. Yeah, I don't even think I would really be looking at Platinum Eagles at this point. The 1 ounce of platinum I have is in the form of an eagle, but I think going forward I would probably just stick to generic bullion. One thing that I do have a few pieces of is platinum jewelry that I picked up over at mene.com. If you guys are familiar with mene.com, I've covered it in videos in the past. I haven't done anything recently, and this is sort of just an aside. But they've got all this cool 24 karat bullion jewelry, and I'm not an affiliate or anything. Well, I think some in my videos have an affiliate link for Mene, but they're not a sponsor or anything. I just like them. They're a cool company. And they make this pure 24 karat bullion gold and platinum jewelry. And I do have, I don't have the platinum jewelry, my wife does. But I do find that if you're a married stacker out there and you're having a hard time getting your spouse on board for stacking, this is a great option. You'll probably find that they're a lot more open to stacking in the form of jewelry when you're getting it as a gift. So that's just kind of an aside. But I do have a few. Again, my wife has a few pieces of platinum jewelry that I picked up over here at Mene. So that's always an option as well. So back to the super chat here. I remember selling junk when the dealers were paying $18 over spot. Elaborate on that. That might have been a while ago. $18 over spot for junk silver. I don't remember that. Might have been before my time. I mean, I started stacking around like 2009, 2010. So yeah, I'm not sure. I guess at times, maybe the premium has been higher in the past. Mene is cool. Yeah, Mene is cool. I like them. They're awesome. Let's see what else we got here. I guess that's pretty much it. I didn't really have anything else for you guys. There are a few things about the channel I'd like to keep you up to date. Tomorrow, I'm planning on doing an interview with Sean Fu. I mentioned him earlier in the live stream here. If you're not familiar with his channel, he does some really amazing analysis on the ongoing crisis in U.S. Treasuries and the petrodollar. So definitely check his channel out. And I'm not sure exactly when I'll get to launch that interview. It'll probably be sometime next week when I've had time to edit it and put it together. But stick around for that. Also, I am going to have some giveaways coming up. SD Bullion, is a channel sponsor now. And if you've noticed that I've been putting out more content, again, having a channel sponsor is really nice because it's going to allow me to put more time into the channel. And so, head over to sdbullion.com. There's a link down in the description of this video if you want to get some gold and silver. They've got a great selection, great prices, and they are my preferred bullion dealer. And I just want to say a big thank you to them for sponsoring the channel because, again, it's going to allow me to put out more of this great content for all of you who are really who I'm doing this for. And let's see. S-Win says, careful with 18-karat men's jewelry. It is heavily faked. Yeah, be very circumspect about any jewelry you're buying in the secondary market, I would say. Mene, again, great place. Maybe I'll put a link down in the description to Mene. I do have an affiliate link for them. Basically, I get credit if you guys click that link and sign up and buy something on my next purchase from them. I don't know when that's going to be. I don't have any plans to buy any jewelry, but, that's fun. And I am a customer of theirs. They're a great company. They make awesome stuff. And if you want to get a gift or anything this Christmas or this holiday season, then they're a great place to check out. Oh, one last thing. I have been meaning to mention this, and I just haven't gotten around to doing it, but there are some other channels. I think I heard this mentioned on the Wall Street Silver channel, which is awesome. An Economic Ninja. Some of you guys probably follow him too. He has a great channel. They're doing this hashtag. I don't know the hashtag now, so I'll stay tuned for a future video. I'll go into more depth on this, but it's something about buying silver as a Christmas gift and, celebrating that with a hashtag. And I will go ahead and say that I think it's awesome if you're looking for gifts. Gold and silver are a great thing to buy for people, whether it be in the form of jewelry or bars or coins or what have you, because, giving cash can be a little tacky, and who wants to get Federal Reserve notes? But I have got some pieces of gold and silver that I received as gifts that I'm still glad to have in my possession. It's like the gift that someone's going to be able to enjoy for a long time, and it might really help them out in the near future if we get some kind of a, massive collapse of the currency. Hashtag silver in my stocking. Thank you, Christ Heals. Awesome. Thank you for, you guys already know about this. Thank you so much for putting that in the live stream chat there. Yeah, hashtag silver in my stocking. So if you're thinking about buying some gifts for people this holiday season, I hope you're thinking of buying some gifts. But if you do, consider getting them some silver, some gold. And listen, one other thing. If you're getting gold and silver, or silver specifically in this case, for a young person, a kid, whether it be a friend of the family or a niece or nephew or your own child, whatever, if you're getting some silver for a kid, take a moment when you give it to them to educate them a little bit, because I have got a silver bar. I think I've showed it in videos before. It's a 1-ounce silver bar that somebody gave me when I was like 8 years old, and I've been carrying it around my whole life since then. And I had no idea what the significance of that metal was. I was smart enough to hang on to it, but they gave it to me, and I'm sure that person who gave it to me, for a reason, right? Because they understood sound money, and they understood the importance of physical, tangible assets, but they didn't tell me anything about it. And, I don't hold that against that person. I'm still glad they gave me the silver. It's a very nice gift. But, the gift of knowledge and the gift of imparting some information that people probably aren't going to get anywhere else, especially kids these days. I mean, I remember when I was younger, and I took an economics class in, I think, high school. And I mean, the thing is just like a brainwashing session for the Federal Reserve. I mean, the Fed wrote the textbook that they're teaching kids in economics these days. So if you're giving some silver, hashtag silver in my stocking, to some young people, just take a moment and educate them a little bit, because they're not going to get that information anywhere else. And you will be doing them a huge favor in giving them a gift that is more valuable than any medal or any trinket you could give them. So on that note, I will wrap up this live stream. Thank you all very much for watching. Thank you very much to everybody who has subscribed to the channel and gotten us to this 30,000 subscriber mark. It is amazing. I cannot wait to see what we have in store moving forward for this channel and this community. And again, just a tremendous thank you. You are all awesome. Thank you for everybody who put a super chat in there. I really appreciate that. That's amazing. And thank you just for commenting and participating. And I hope you are all staying safe. Happy stacking, everybody. Smart Silver Stacker out.